So, this movie has really left an impression on me. It's allowed me to reflect on a lot of things, and overall, it's just become very near and dear to my heart. Um, Now, I've seen other reviews on this movie, and I think they're really good. However, I just wanted to share my thoughts and opinions on this movie that I don't think those other reviews really encapsulated. So, here's my best shot. Um, Also, this video will be filled with spoilers. I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, so just a heads up. Also, the way I'm going to organize this video is first by listing the things I liked about it, and that's going to be split into the thematic things I liked about it, and then the more superficial things I liked, and I'll do the same thing with my dislikes. So yeah. Also, I will put the timestamps of those categories so you can skip to them, because that's useful, right? Yes. So I saw this movie the first night it came out with a couple of my friends, and after I saw it, I thought, I don't really know how I feel about this. While I came in expecting that there would be hints of prejudice and bigotry or bad, because of how the trailer was and how they emphasized Judy saying, "I'm not some token bunny." So I came in expecting that there would be hints of that, but I wasn't expecting that for it to be the central theme or a central theme of the movie. And also the fact that Judy herself participated in the prejudice and bigotry. I wasn't expecting that, because usually in movies, like especially family movies like this, the main character is one of the two dichotomies, good or bad, and there's never really this gray area. But it seems ever since Frozen, Disney's been trying to push the fact that there's more sides to a character. You can be good, but you can still have biases, which reflects real life. And it actually allowed me to reflect a bit myself, because I was scared. I was scared that this movie would be really hated, because in my experience, anything that has brought up race or racial relations has been met with resentment and other negative feelings. And I also realized my bias in that while I was watching the movie with friends, and some of my friends were Caucasian and some of my friends were African American at that time, I was worried that my Caucasian friends might think something along the lines of, "Oh my gosh, another social justice warrior movie or thing in my face, like race is always in my face, you can't watch a movie without all this in your face." And I realize now that that was a bias I had. However, despite that feeling, this movie was really well received. And my friends really liked it, and they said, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to buy it when it comes out on DVD." And I think there's a few reasons behind why this movie was well received, despite having racial relations, or I guess species relations, as a central theme. And I think the first reason is because it wasn't perceived as preachy, and I emphasize perceived because I thought it was pretty preachy, to be honest. And especially because a lot of the things that were talked about in this movie are things that I've experienced in my life, or I've heard very similar things in my life. So for instance, when Judy says to Nick, "Oh, you're so articulate, you're an articulate fella," I was just there like, because in the past I've had people tell me, "Oh, you speak so well for a black girl," right? And all these other things. So, and several elements like that, several things occurred many times in this movie, similar situations like that, with Assistant Mel Bellwether and Nick trying to touch her wool, or the fact that gee, I don't know, like the how Judy first, I guess, profiled Nick when he was going into the elephant store, and how she felt really bad about profiling him afterwards. Things like that. I thought this movie really put it in your face, but I guess it wasn't perceived as preachy because it showed the story from both sides, right? And I think, and what I mean by that is that the fact that you have these good characters and intelligent characters who have their biases, right? And you see where they get these biases from. So, for instance, in Judy's case, she grew up, she had her experience with the fox bully when she was young, and how he scarred her, or I guess like hit her, like scratched her. And the fact that her parents were kind of biased against foxes and so on. And you see it from Nick's side as well. Well, he was really excited to join their world's version of the Boy Scouts, and yet he was muzzled, right? And you can see why he has this pessimistic, I guess, feeling towards the world, and why he says, if that's all people are going to think about me, then why try anything different? He's tried to be accepted, but he's been rejected. And I think having those two sides to this movie really helped people relate, or really help people understand a little bit more. Because usually when we feel very strongly about something, and I've definitely had this in my experience, when I feel very strongly about something and the other person on the other side, it's hard to see the other side because I've never really related to it. So I think the movie did a really good job with that, and I think that's why it helped with being perceived as non-preachy. And also, you know, it wasn't, now I'm not saying it wasn't, bigotry is bad, kids, and you shouldn't do that. No, while it didn't do that, it was still very in your face. But yeah. Actually, one of the things I was really worried about, and this ties into why I think the movie was well received and I personally liked it a lot, was actually Judy's plug on being a cop and saying, I'm supposed to help the world, but I think I broke it. And I thought that was the thing that people would be like, this movie is anti-cop and so on. But I think the creators dealt with it really well, because they often showed it from a cop's perspective as well. They showed that cops are good guys. They're trying their best to like help people, and they deal with a lot of crud every day. And this is shown when Judy is ticketing and people are giving her a hard time for doing her job. But yeah, I think showing it from that perspective as well really helped with how well this movie was well received. Now, another thing I really liked about this movie is that one species or one group does not directly correlate to a group or a race in our world. And I like how it's not perfectly analogous. So for instance, and what I mean by that is like the predators make up 10% of the population, while prey make up 90% of the population in Zootopia. But however, predators are part of the police force. Predators are there's a predator mayor and things like that. And Assistant Mel Bellwether, for instance, even though she's a sheep, she talks about, while she's one of the majority, she talks about like, oh, I think he just got me to get the sheep vote, right? Or the fact that there's a mammal inclusion initiative, and it's for mammals like Judy, small mammals like Judy, and the fact that Judy is the first rabbit officer, right? And also the things like you would think. So for instance, if you think that Nick was supposed to represent a black person, right? Well, the thing is, though, like Assistant Mel Bellwether could also do that, because they talk about how they touch your hair, which is like a problem people with curly hair, regardless of race, I guess. But you know, I know a lot of black or African American women complain about. So I really enjoyed that because that made all of the characters so much more relatable to me. I actually, like, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh gosh, is Judy like representing like a black person or something? But it's not. No, they're not perfectly analogous, and I really enjoyed that. And I think it helped with the whole, like, I can understand with seeing the both sides of the story, because you can see it from multiple perspectives, how discrimination and bigotry play a part in our lives, and having a more neutral stance towards that. So yeah, I like that a lot. Also, another thing I really liked about this movie was, thematically, was that they kept backing up, you shouldn't stereotype somebody, right? So while sometimes, you know, the characters played into their animal stereotypes, like Judy eating carrots and things like that, or Nick being quote quote sly, there were several times in the movie where they showed animals going against those stereotypes. So, for example, the elephant woman in the naturalist club, the yoga instructor, you know, I can't remember what his name is, but the animal with the goofy hair was like, oh man, I wish I had a memory like her, but he has this great memory, and he's saying like, oh, elephants have great memories. Well, she didn't, right? And the other thing with Mr. Big being a crime boss, even though he's really small, and it really shows how Judy, you know, we have these prejudices or biases. So when Judy is told that there's a Mr. Big, right? She keeps asking if all the polar bears are Mr. Big. Is he Mr. Big? Is that Mr. Big? And then she sees the actual Mr. Big and she's like, huh. You know, because she wasn't expecting that. She already, by the name, she had that bias. Like, he has to be something big. He has to be, because he's a crime boss, he has to be like, she had certain expectations for that, and I really liked how they played against that. And also going back to the naturalist dude who had the really crazy hair and had the really amazing memory, I think it kind of shows how, you know, because of certain stereotypes, we devalue ourselves a little bit, or we have lower confidence in ourselves. So and that personally relates to me because I remember I had a cousin when I was really young. I had a cousin who was about 9 years old, and we were at a barbecue, and we were talking about college, and he was saying like, oh, well, you have to be an Asian to go into that college because you have to be an Asian to be good at math, right? He was like, and it just blew my mind, right? He didn't think he was good enough to do something because he wasn't Asian, right? Like, I'm saying, no, you're if you try hard, if you learn it yourself, you can do it, you know? You don't have to be a certain type of person to do something. But I think that moment really spoke to me in the movie because I've faced that a couple of times, and I think while it was a comedic scene, I also think there's a lot of value to it. Also, I really liked how Judy wasn't only being discriminated against because she was female, right? She wasn't the first female officer because, you know, Francine was an elephant and she was, you know, female. I liked how they showed that it was both, right? It wasn't just one, like, you're not discriminated against because you're female, or just because you're female, or just because you're this type of species. It was both in her case, right? And I think that was a really good decision because, you know, discrimination doesn't happen in these you know, boxes. Like, it doesn't happen. They're not like separated from each other. It happens both to each other. It can happen at the same time. And I thought that was a really nice perspective that they added into the movie. Also, the final thing I really liked about this movie was that they showed the protesters, right? When after Judy, told her thing about, it might be in their DNA, she showed how that the movie showed how the hatred happened and how that prejudice and how with fear people or rather animals stayed away, or they had these biases got emphasized really high, and in response to that, in response to hatred and resentment, the protesters and Gazelle were saying, no, it's okay, we're all people, we're all animals. And I really like the line how, the pig was screaming at a tiger, go back to the forest, where you came from. And she's like, I'm from the savannah. And again, that spoke to me because that is very similar to when people say, go back to Africa or go back to Mexico. And they're like, no, I was born here, And I think especially during this time and election season and everything, I think, wow, this movie was really timely. But yeah, I think that was another thing that really spoke to me, because they didn't have to add that in. They didn't have to add the protesters in, but they did, and I really appreciated that decision. Now, for the superficial things I liked about Zootopia, one being the graphics, the art. Oh my gosh, this movie was beautiful. How they got the detail, the fur, and just everything, I know almost everyone who sees this movie is just like, wow, but wow, Also, I like the different perspectives they showed. So how in one scene, Judy is really small compared to everyone else, and she can't even sit on the chair because it's too big for her, to her being a giant in the mouse town. And I thought that was a really cool idea, and it came out really well. In addition, everything just popped, right? All the color and everything. And also, I really enjoyed the opening sequence of the movie, right? So when the polar bear lady is saying you're dead, or you're dead, honey bunny, or whatever, right? I liked how they took the time during that sequence to introduce all of the areas of Zootopia. Even though we don't get to see we don't get to explore all of them, we know that they're there, right? And then it was re-emphasized that those places existed when Judy travels through the train station. So I thought that was really cool and really creative idea, because think about it, right? If you just come into this place just oh, there's 8 different zones, or how many ever zones there are, and you're just plugged with all this information's thrown at you, I would have been lost, right? I would have been just so we're here, but what about here? And now there's this other place. So I really like how they took the time to actually let us know in advance what those places would be, even if we didn't get to explore all of them. So I thought that was really cool. I also liked how every character was memorable. So while I can't remember all of their names per se, but I remember their presence and who they were as a character. Almost every character that spoke, even the lady that was with Mayor Lionheart that was doing the DNA stuff testing, I remember them, and I think that was incredible, because every time a character spoke or was there, they really showed their presence, and I like that a lot in movies. Characters are the most important thing, right? Also, I really enjoyed how they left Nick and Judy's relationship at the very end of the movie open to interpretation, right? So you know how Nick is like, oh, you know you love me. And she says, and Judy says, do I know that? Yes. Yes, I do. You know, because a friend can also say that, right? A friend can say that, you know, friends while they're driving can just do that, I guess. But also it can be interpreted as a romantic relationship. And I think that makes everybody happy, right? So people who were not looking for them to end up together, they got that if they wanted to interpret it as that, and think that they're just friends. And people who didn't want a romantic relationship could easily do that as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. And finally, another very superficial thing I liked was the foreshadowing of the movie, right? So the fact that the blueberries, I knew they were going to be used somehow, it just didn't click, right? It just didn't click that they were going to use it as a fake, put it into the gun and stuff. So I thought that was really cool how they kept bringing it up, and things that were shown at the beginning of the movie, like, oh, it's in our dinner, like, right, or DNA. They brought, like, Judy brings that up during the press conference and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, I just thought the elements, how they foreshadow it, just really tied it in together. It felt full circle, and that is nice. Now, while there are many pros to this movie, there are also cons. There are also things I did not like. And so I'll start listing off my dislikes. And yeah. So first, I didn't like how they skipped a lot of little details. So, for instance, right, Nick is a criminal, right? Nick has been a criminal. It doesn't change the fact that he lied on his tax returns, right? But, you know, he's friends with Judy, and Judy's like, you should be a cop, right? No one questions this, it's like, oh, you know, because you helped me in this adventure, you're free, you can be a cop now. I was like, that doesn't change the fact at all, right? And also BMO, right? Or I don't even know if his name was BMO. The little fox guy, the Saharan fox, right? What happened to him, right? Is he just like conning people by himself now? I don't know. But yeah, what? Yeah, last time you see him, he has a bat in his hand and just in his shed. Wow. Poor BMO, if that's his name. Also, another thing I really didn't like about the movie was how Nick was so quick to change, right? He was so quick to change and help Judy, right? So there's this person that is blackmailing you and saying like, oh, you know, I can put you in jail for lying on your tax returns. And then because you see her get discriminated against, or you see someone being prejudiced against her, being unfairly or treating her unjustly, you're just like, you know, I felt that way. I don't like that. So I'm gonna help her now. You know, no, you know, in real life that doesn't really happen. Maybe, I guess, but I don't think that would really happen. But I know they did it because, you know, it's a short movie and you want to move things along. But, you know, I think that felt really rushed, and those emotional parts, I guess, like when someone's changing or when something's happening, really felt rushed in this movie. Because in addition to that, when Nick is upset at Judy, right, really ticked off at her, and she comes crying, you know, that emotional scene, it didn't really do anything for me. It was like, okay, I guess it just felt rushed for me. And the fact that, again, he's very quick to forgive her, right? As soon as she said, I'm so sorry. You know, like, this is a person you haven't known for very long, like 2 days, right? And you're just forgiving her like that, which is fine, I guess. It's just, I wish it wasn't as rushed. It didn't feel as rushed. But, you know, I understand you have to do it to move the movie along. Also, the predictable villain, because like by now, just as we are primed to understand, to see these animals as individuals, we're also primed to know that the person they're the animal, again, I keep on doing that, the animal that you try us to suspect the least is usually the villain, right? So that was kind of predictable, but I think of how the movie was, I think that doesn't play such a big role for me. Like yeah, it was predictable, but whatever, I guess. I think one of the things that bothered me more was that, okay, the real criminal has been arrested, but do prejudices still exist? Like, is it, because they show them all, everyone's all happy and everything, right? But that's not, just because you remove the cause, right? The cause, the person who's taking control of this fear, doesn't mean these prejudices are still gone, but they don't really explore that anymore. And I was kind of disappointed to see that they didn't do that. I guess it's implied because Clawhauser got his job back, but it still, I wish they explored it a little bit more. Now, for the more superficial things I disliked, one, Mrs. Otterton keeps saying the things like, oh, we have 2 beautiful children, but where are these children, right? They're never really shown. Like, even when Otterton is in Mr. Otterton's in the hospital, and Mrs. Otterton is hugging him, where are your kids? Where are they? They just never show up. And I thought that was like, okay, wow. Yeah. Also, going back on that, right? Sorry, going back really quick on, I just thought of this. Going back on how Nick is, like, it's implied that he can just be a police officer even though he was a criminal or a con artist or whatever. Mr. Big is a crime boss, and he is friends with Judy. Judy is just like, you're my friend, I'm gonna let this slide, it's alright. I'm just like, wow. Like, yeah, he helped her, and yeah, like, I guess you can't really do anything in that situation, or you don't want to, like, rat out your friends, but dang, like, he's a crime boss, and you're a cop, and, you probably arrest him or do some investigation or something, but it is a family movie, I guess. Also, I guess something else I didn't really like was the fact that they escaped through a toilet, right? They escaped the prison or the lab or whatever through a toilet, and I thought that was a huge cop out, because it's just no, you don't do that. You can't flush yourself down a toilet. I don't know, right? If there is some strange way for you to flush yourself down the toilet without killing yourself or without really damaging yourself, I guess, but it didn't really make sense. I thought that was, they could have tried to find, I guess, a different way, or I think the directors could have made a different decision on that, but I guess they didn't find it very important. It just bothered me a little bit. I was like, really? And finally, I think the last thing I didn't really like was, and I know it wasn't really important, which is why I think they kept it from the movie, was the fact that we don't see Nick going through the training to be a cop, right? So Judy is first in her class, she does all of this hard stuff, right, and becomes a cop, but we know, at least it's implied from the movie, that Nick isn't a risk taker. Nick is kind of like, I do what's easy, right? So I thought I would have found it really interesting to see him go through that training, and the polar bear just be like, you're dead, Nick, something like that. But I can understand why they kept it out, but I was kind of a little disappointed on that. Yeah, but yeah, So those are my likes and dislikes of the Zootopia movie. Again, this movie has really left an impression on me, and I would like to hear your thoughts and comments below. And I guess just to end off, my favorite scene of this whole movie, my two favorite scenes were one, when Vimo, I don't know if that's his name, but the little Saharan fox was like, "She hustled you good." I was done right there. I just, also, the scene where Judy's like ticketing and people are giving her a hard time, because I was like, wow, being a cop sucks. Those were my, but yeah, those are my two favorite scenes of the movie. And let me know what yours was too. So this is my first review. Hopefully gave some insight, or hopefully I conveyed how I felt about the movie effectively, I guess. And again, I said this already, but I would like to hear your thoughts and comments. So thanks, and bye.